from the show. What's going on? Joe Tiseo, how you doing?
Pretty good. It's great to be here today.
And also Susan Swanson from Team Port Charlotte, who she'll be here in just a minute. She ran out to get a cup of coffee.
Hi, and how are you?
Good, good. Now, we're here today, the discussion, going to be talking about Parkside. But before we get underway, Joe, your thoughts from yesterday. I mean, you were there and
I'll tell you what.
watched the shenanigans, if you will.
I don't know what was more exciting, Ken, the national debate or what went on at the commission chamber. Because, you know, get your popcorn and lemonade and pull up a chair, because I'll tell you what, it was exciting. It really was. From just a few months ago, when this the whole incubator purchase, you know, came to be, and then to the vote yesterday, it really was exciting. You know, and I think a lot of the people who wanted to give their input got a chance to do so. I mean, it was democracy in action. You know, ultimately the commissioners were overwhelmed by the people who were against the project, and they voted. And you know, I don't think there were any losers in this thing, because the taxpayers always come out ahead. You know, the property's still on the tax rolls. It's part of the tax base, and the taxpayers won. So I think it was good. And
the building will be sold. I mean, I think that if anything, this probably generated a lot of publicity on that piece of property. And now that it's on the market again, you might see it sell a little bit quicker. You know,
I got to tell you, it's kind of a funny story. You know, sometimes you want to pinpoint when it changed direction to where it looked like this was a slam dunk. You had 3 commissioners on board. It was going to happen.
Thought it was just going to be a
Yeah, I sat in at the workshop on Monday, the pre-agenda meeting Monday, and Commissioner Deutsch, and I could narrow this down to this one moment in time. Everything hinged on what he had to say, and he brought up a point, and it was he brought up a point about a 120-pound woman wearing stilettos. And I'll tell you, it's kind of a funny story. He was trying to describe that the building didn't have the right load calculations. There was no structural engineering, and it was not designed per code to meet the
library.
For a library. Mm-hmm. And the example he brought up, he said, I want to talk about a 120-pound woman with stilettos or high heels on. He goes, think about the weight concentrated on the heel as it hits the floor. And that was his way of talking about a concentrated load. Mm-hmm. And when he started describing how it wasn't designed for a library, I mean, the oxygen left the room, and, you know, it was the presumption of correctness couldn't be overcome. He turned the engineering world on its ear with that. You know, and I've been around engineering a long time, being a general contractor, and I thought it was, you know, right there you knew it wasn't going to make it. Mm-hmm. You know, I could see Patton looking for the exits and Goodman zipping up the suitcase and leaving town. You know, he may as well have been like Felix Baumgartner on the 126,000 feet jumping out of the cubicle without a parachute at that point, because it was over.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I want to tell you, Commissioner Deutsch, for the research he did on that, he really came at this thing from an engineering perspective. He was always concerned about the building, about the elevations, the flooding, and you know, I just thought it was funny how it all came down to a woman in stilettos. And people were kind of looking at each other in the room.
Where's he going?
But, you know, he made his point. He made it well.
Good.
And you know, Mr. Milligan, Dave Milligan, who was in charge of the due diligence report, he didn't disagree that the structural engineering wasn't done on the building, and it wasn't going to satisfy code, so he couldn't clearly tell the commissioners at that point that the building would be adequate for a library. And I think that was part of the rush. You know, it was an incubator. Then when
many things.
Yeah, then it turned into a library.
I'm just glad it happened. Yeah. The way that it did. Taxpayers are better off. The commission did the right thing in yanking it from the agenda and moving on.
Yeah, I mean, two things that came out of it that are good. You know, maybe now the need of an incubator, some type of incubator here, is out there, and also the need for a library. If South County really needs a library, then, you know, it's out there, it's been discussed. Commissioner Constant said he believes they need a library. So now 2 things came out of the incubator building. Maybe the need for an incubator somewhere else, more affordable, with the proper due diligence, and
got
library.
One in Englewood.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, the great article, and again, the one in Englewood seems to be based pretty much on the one that they have in Lee County, which has been somewhat successful from what I've read about it. So, you know, that's how you do an incubator properly, and let's move on from there. And no grandiose
Yeah, and I went back and forth because I was busy with work, and I came back in towards the end of the day, and Lou was still there. It was just him and I left as far as the public was concerned that wanted to speak at the citizens input. And I basically thank the board for hearing us out. I thank Commissioner Constance. He did give me an hour of time up in the commission boardroom to do a presentation on incubators. And I don't know if he had to do that or if he didn't have to do that, but he knew my position, and I clearly knew his position on it. But he gave me that time anyway, and I think that's a good thing. You should be able to listen to people who object, and be able to listen to those people, because that's what it's all about. And he thanked the people for their input, and that's a good thing. So I mean, at the end of the day, we can still all get along.
That's how representative government works.
That's right. So I think we had democracy in action. I think it was a good thing that happened.
All right.
All right.
Moving on to Parkside. Sue, bring us up to date. Where are we at here? What's going on with Parkside? Where does it stand? Everybody knew from the get-go this wasn't going to be an overnight deal. This is a project that's probably going to take years to complete. But where do we stand right now?
Well, we're in good standing right now. We're probably farther ahead than we thought we'd be.
That's
quite
good.
frankly. We've had a lot of people come on board in terms of volunteer effort. And we have a number of things going on right now. Probably the most exciting things are the redevelopment of and redesign of the Harbor Boulevard from 41 to Olean. The county is going to be redoing that road. And we have met with the county, and we talked about the trees that will be used and the type of landscaping that will be done. So it's going to be really beautiful. And 41 and Harbor Boulevard is our gateway, and so it's really an important area. And we also have a project on Elkham Boulevard coming on board, and CCU has determined that the reclaimed water line will be put in from Midway all the way up to 41. And because of that, the sidewalks will be torn up. So really, this is perfect because we piggybacked that project, or I should say the county did. And they are now going to put in a 10-foot trail, our multi-use path or trail, of which eventually Parkside will have like 6.5 miles of these 10 feet multi-use trails. So this is the beginning.
Is that going to connect all the way with Kings Highway?
No.
It's just going to be on Elkham right now?
On Elkham right now,
Okay.
that's the beginning, that's the start of it.
Okay.
We'll also have 10-foot paths or multi-use trails on Harbor Boulevard and also coming down Aaron Street.
Okay.
So, we're sort of ahead of schedule here, so we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I know on the landscape committee, we were talking about identifying all the gateways
Yeah.
and tying those into what you're trying to do at Parkside is a real possibility. The reuse mains for irrigation. That's not new water. That's water we flush down the toilet. It gets treated and pumped back through the line. So
Right.
it's good for the environment as far as we're taking bad water and using it for irrigation purposes. So, as part of the beautification of Charlotte County, and something I've talked about before, setting the table for the future, making Port Charlotte look the best it can be. With 10,000 people retiring a day, we have to become a value proposition and an option for those people. And I think Parkside can tie into the whole picture. I've been here for 30 years, and I remember driving down Harbor Boulevard. I don't think that road's ever been repaved. And I got to tell you, when I got my license in 1984, I think it was, or 83, I remember driving down that road by myself for the first time. It was like the white knuckle ride. Because, I don't think those lanes on Harbor are the proper size. I mean, I never went out and measured them with a tape measure, but if you've ever driven down Harbor and you've got somebody next to you, I mean, there's no room for error. You do a little drift, you're in the ditch, there's no shoulder. So, there's no doubt that some work needs to be done there. It is, Harbor is a main gateway to the hospitals. Let's face it, we look at our population here, close to 45% is 60 years and older. And, we need to have good access to the hospitals, and it needs to look good, too. And I think Parkside is all, plays into that plan. There's definitely a need for planning in the community. One only needs to drive down 41 and look at the hodgepodge of development. You know, and you say, is that what we want going forward, or do we want some type of master plan for Charlotte County? And we do. We have the 2050 plan, and I think the CRA, Parkside CRA, kind of was born from that plan. For that section of town, it's 1,100 acres, what I would consider downtown Port Charlotte. You know, and you know, you've got 800 identified commercial businesses, over 41 residences, over 8,000 people living right within that 1,100 acres. So, you know, there's people there, and I think, though, my perspective on community redevelopment is when, you know, you look how they got there, how they took the 1,100 acres and made it a CRA. You know, the area was blighted, and I lived through Murdoch Village when that was blighted, and I kind of scratched my head a decade ago saying, it doesn't fit what blighted is, to me. But when you look at the statute, Florida statutes give you 14 reasons to blight. You only have to qualify with 2 of those criteria to blight. And sometimes we have to be careful in the liberal application of blighting. I know there's some libertarians out there, and I've spoken to some that are always worried that government gets in the way too much. But I think with Parkside, you know, we have to realize that we do need planning too. There's got to be a balance in making our community better, looking out for the growth in the future, because how are we going to realize the efficiencies of scale if we don't get people to come into our community and expand the tax base? CCU needs hookups, CCU needs more deposit money, so all our rates can come down, so our base rates can stabilize, so we don't have to worry every year about, you know, CCU not having enough money to meet their obligations. You know, obviously they have a debt load to worry about from that purchase a few years ago. But, you know, so I think there's a lot of good things that could come out of this, but, you know, we also have to realize how we got there. And talking to a lot of people, you know, you can probably take 10 people off the street and say, do you know what Parkside is? Do you know what a CRA is? And they'll